Welcome aboard Canal Light Vessel Automatic, Whitchurch's answer to pirate radio. Sadly, it's fully legal and not a radio station. On the plus side, Tony Blackburn is not with us, and seasickness tablets are unnecessary. So settle back for the lock-in, a meandering journey, occasionally fraught with the rusty shopping trolleys that fate throws in our path, as we get to know some of the people who have helped contribute to making our brilliant market town, that also has a canal, where we are.
For the first edition of The Lock-In, we're joined by Steve Chapman, a man of many parts. Literally, he's an actor. You may well recognise his face, often seen walking around Whitchurch in beard and distinctive hat. No, not the pirate, but they do stunt double for each other. On Blackberry Fair Day, you'll often find him in bed. A bed being pushed up the high street. It makes no sense, but that's part of the charm. Plus, he's exceptionally lazy. Steve is one half of the duo that brought us Blackberry Fair, and he's joined us this evening for a beer and chat.
So, we are here with Steve Chapman, founder of the Blackberry Fair. Led him to becoming Shropshire's answer to Michael. Is it Eavis or Ives? How is it Eavis? Is it pronounced Ives?
Eavis.
No, is Eavis, as it's spelled?
As it's spelled, yeah.
Just shows how out of touch I am. Anyway.
What is he from Glastonbury?
Glastonbury, yeah.
That's it.
It's not just a local butcher.
No, it's not.
He's a farmer made good. So, Steve, you came with all of this knowledge and all this passion, all this positivity, and all the other P's, and you thought, okay, Whitchurch needs a massive festival. One of the chefs at the Black Bear the other day, I said, what do you know about the Blackberry Fair? Because I think I've only ever been once. And he said, well, basically, I was in early one morning preparing, and this 8-foot crow walked past the window, and I thought I'd ordered the wrong mushrooms for my mushrooms on toast. So, what is it? Because I imagine some people might not know.
The funny thing about Blackberry Fair is it came from nowhere. It is more than anything an ethos, a philosophy on life, which sounds a bit deep, I know, but it isn't. It was always intended to be about how you approach something rather than an event. I know you go on and we tease each other about this positive thing, but it's about positive action. And it's about saying to each other in life, because I've never been into committees. I sat on a few committees back in Bethgelert in the 70s, the Carnival Committee.
Every committee needs a dictator.
Oh my God! Well, the Carnival Committee in Bethgelert used to have about 40 members of the public, the community would sit around and could never agree on anything. You'd have a treasurer who said, "I saved £2,000 this year." You're thinking, it's not about saving, but it's about putting on a great time, and I had no time, and still to this day, I have heavy debates with people about it. So it's not about committee, it's about making something happen. And if you think about life, the things that hold us back, now they taught us this at drama school. 2 weeks into drama school, we went up a mountain. Day after, they said, why did we go up the mountain? I said, see who the leaders were, who the hangers-on were. Because you used to do it at the Adventure Centre, take kids on big walks. He said, no, it's all to do with fronts. I said, oh, yeah. I said, I told you a joke and you didn't laugh. He says, no, because you're bloody boring. And 2 weeks, I went down, I disappeared down the because we all have an overcoat of our personality that we hang on. That's what helps us survive. And all they wanted to do at drama school was that we recognised it. So if you had to play Henry VIII, you set yours to one side and take on the overcoat of Henry VIII. And so we all carry those around with us, our fronts, whether it's to, we're a person of attitude, politics, ego, personality clashes, old ideas. These are all the things that, to me, sort of hold us back and prevent us from sort of moving things forward. Very simplistic of you, I hasten to add.
What is it? A bit like it's unnecessary baggage, is it? The front that we have, it gets in the way of the real business.
Yes, exactly. It's something that it can spoil great ideas. You must have
fear as well.
It's what?
It's fear as well, isn't it?
Yeah, insecurity.
You talked about earlier on that person who kind of gave you the confidence and believed in you, and I think a lot of us, we are. I read a quote somewhere. It was, a man who has no fear has no imagination, and it kind of rang quite true. And it's how that fear is channeled. And I found in my life that actually, if you have a couple of people that believe in you, that you respect, it can often change you as a person completely, because you think, actually, what I'm trying to do here is okay.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, because if you doubt yourself, or you I mean, honestly, the profession I'm in the theatre and television industry, it's ruthless. How many auditions I go for, you get no replies. You don't know if you're good, bad, indifferent, whatever. And many a time I've stood on a stage looking at the director thinking, they've cast the wrong person here. They know I'm the wrong person for the job. But what was the most liberating experience for me was, it was about 4 years ago. It was just post-COVID. I've been doing this Christmas show down in London for the last sort of 7 years now. And we had this director. Every morning we'd stand in the circle. He says, "So right, what are you bringing into the room today?" And for the first time I said, "I shouldn't be here." I said, "I'm this little Welsh lad from Bethgelert in North Wales, and here I am in London."
And he went, "Oh, that place with the amazing New Year's Eve parties and the Dragon Maiden."
Yes, if he totally got it.
Beauty and canisters.
I'd have been over the moon if he'd said that.
But it sounds like what you did is you were really real. Actually, you were totally honest, and you said, you brought yourself to the table and your insecurity.
Yeah, and you're right, because when you're fearful, I mean, how many times do we try to impress each other when we're nervous? And I think back now, it's just sort of jumping sideways here, but when I look at kids and the problems they have at school like that with bullies and stuff like that. When I think back to my school days now, I look at some of the kids that I looked up to. They had all sorts of issues of their own, but they were the heroes of the time, and I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but it's how fear and insecurity plays out, and so it is about creating a platform that can strip that away. And again, I've tried, and it's evolved over the years. But Blackberry Fair, when it started, as I said, it wasn't ever intended to be an event. It's just that we thought, well, let's put on an event to try and demonstrate what we're about. And
when you say what we're about, what is the we? Who is the we?
All right, what the philosophy of Blackberry Fair was trying to evoke, and it was it was about celebrating the arts. It was about celebrating community first and foremost. Community is very much there at its heart.
How do you determine and how do you define community? What is it? Who makes it up?
Well, the one thing I am is I'm very simplistic in life. I have the mantra simple imaginative solutions, and I live by that, because whenever I sit at home, when we've had any kind of meetings, discussion like that, and we've been discussing something, I sit and I look at a piece of paper and I always write simple imaginative solutions across the top of the paper, because I think there's got to be a simple way to achieve this, because again, I'm 64. I have so much energy to give, so much time to give. I have my family, I have work, hopefully. So I've got much time to give this, but I want it to happen. So you think, right, let's do away with the not the peripheral things. Come on, Dave, you're good with English.
Excuse me, sorry.
Do away with the
extraneous
circumstances that can get in the way of us moving forwards, i.e., like our egos play into something, or there's competition, you can get envy. All these little things that creep in that can prevent people moving forwards together. And this is what I mean about fun. I always say I don't mean fun in the cheap sense. I mean fun that you enjoy being part of something. Because if you're part of something and you're having a heap of fun doing it, you will come back for more. If it's heavy weather, if we met heavy weather or something, you think, I don't want to work with that person again. Yeah. It just doesn't happen, and it peters out. Whereas if something is fun and you feel energised, you feel valued, the word value and the word respect play a big part in me, because I believe we've lost some of that.
So Mark Carney, the now Prime Minister of Canada and ex-Governor of the Bank of England, talked about what we value. And one of his key things was actually, he was talking about the financial sector as well, but also community. So I suppose you've just talked about fun and involvement. And, I suppose I've asked it before, but what is community for you? What is it? Who are they? Is it anybody involved in an area, or is it an attitude or an ethos? What is it?
It is the people, because I wrote down recently the 4 branches of what I deem to be sustainability, and it's and social cohesion, or people are in there. I thought, but they affect everything else around it. So if we get that right, then those other things will become right, like the creative thinking, like the economy, like the environmental stewardship. you can't do that without people's behaviour, without people interacting together. And again, I go back to the Millennium celebrations in Bethgelert of what we achieved as a group of people. It opened my eyes. You know, you have these little epiphany moments in your life. That was an epiphany moment. My kids, they're all creative and they're all going through their early 20s where it's all about them. And I did, when I was doing the carnivals with my pal Alan, he'd build the floats, I'd go in and decorate the main thing. And I used to shut the doors and think, right, leave me alone, I'm happy doing it on my own. Whereas doing the celebration for the Millennium, it was a bit of us all. And it wasn't perfect by any means, but everyone was involved, and it was crucial that we stayed together.
Right,
that was the power of it.
Yeah, it's not a perfect thing. It's imperfect, rough-edged, but all in it together.
Yeah,
and there's something about that.
And that's the success of it, is if you stay together. And it's challenging because we still all have to exist with our front. We can't. We're not. We had a meeting 2 or 3 years ago one day, and I had to impress on people. I said, look, we don't organise Blackberry Fair by committee because we've all got in a room together, and suddenly people start saying we should be doing it. I said no. I said, and I've always been accused that I don't delegate enough. I said, but we do it in our own way. We are, and we've talked about this already with Action Easter, of this thing of curation. That all we are, myself and Claire with Blackberry Fair, are curators. We're just people that hold the strings and gently tie the strings together. And if there's enough money, they all get tied together. They're not. Some of the strings have to be let go, because the premise of its success for me, as it is, because it was, like I said to you, it was never intended to be an event. It was something we sold as a philosophy for suggesting to the town of Whitchurch what it could do. So we staged a couple of events to say, have you thought about your markets? Have you thought about live music in town? Have you thought about some environmental stewardship? Have you thought about more art, visual art in the town? So we used it as a platform, and that's what it's become. It's become this invisible platform, this is where I'm proud, if anything, that I've utilised all the skills I've ever trained to be, from being a cook to being an actor, is to utilise those skills. And so it's a metaphorical stage.
Yeah, it represents a lot more than just a fair, doesn't it?
Oh yes, it does. It's that philosophy, Dave, is right there at its heart. And I always say to the guys on the day, at 10 o'clock, the curtains open, and we have to survive. As Laurie was talking about the live performance, that's it. We're all part of it, and you and me, the traders, we are the performers. And the beauty of it, and this is one of the great things of theatre, is that the public get to step onto the stage and engage with the performers, and what you're engaging with is life. And so when we talk about when we're putting the show together, it's a celebration, and I think a lot of the performers that come recognise this. They're never just filling gaps. There's a purpose for everybody being part of Blackberry Fair. They have a role to play, whether it's celebrating their story, whether they're doing first aid, whatever. We are all putting that jigsaw together, and it's a celebration of life. And so between now, we've just started organising this year's, and it feels totally and utterly chaotic. We've hardly got any money in the bank. We have this panic time when when we wish we had money. If someone gave us a cheque for 30k, we could organise Blackberry Fair in a week. We have a basic structure to it, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel every year. You put this basic plan in place. It's got an infrastructure with a list of things. You tick box, close the road, do this. That changes because the cost goes up, or so and so is not available. But then you come to the content, and the beauty of that, a bit like the volunteers, there are performers, there are people who've come back year on year on year. And one of the guy particularly is Paul Hand, Mr. Bees and Trees, very clever guy. And he says, it's his benchmark, and he won't miss Blackberry Fair because he says, I love the ethos behind what you do. It is that, it's about us. It's about us as a family. And, family come into that. And to me, the door with Blackberry Fair and what it's about is open to anybody. It's as inclusive as it can be. And if you step forward with an idea, and I think that kind of fits into the ethos. If it goes against it, we've yet to have something that's actually gone against it. And things do happen. I remember one year some guy turned up with a great big Merc in the back of the Civic, parked it in the middle, and got out on the street and started selling hats. I think, who did he pay? No. But it was so quirky. We thought, well, let him get on with it. You
do this Blackberry Fair with Claire.
Yeah.
Who is Claire?
Well, Claire's a local lass. She moved away from Whitchurch, born and bred in the town, obviously, but she moved away for a few years, and then she came back just after we'd started Blackberry Fair. She got a great passion for the environment and the arts. She lived up in Hebden Bridge down in London, so she brought an awful lot of experience with her. And during the period we've been sort of curating this fair together, she's done a PhD in oceanography, so she's a really clever lady. And so she brings her own energy and her own focus and her own passions to the fair, which is great. So, there's little bits of us that are sometimes chalk and cheesy, but there's an awful lot of us that aren't. And we have, we rub off really well together. And the thing I love about working with Claire is that she's got that same maverick spirit that she'll dive in and give anything a go. And and that's what makes putting the fair together. It's much more fun when you're doing it with somebody than just trying to do things on your own. It's never intended to be like that. It's about people. So so she's a really important cog in the machine.
I have that.
So when you say it's kind of everything in it is life. If I was a newbie like I was the other time I went, what am I going to see there? What figuratively, not figuratively, but literally, what's included? What is on stage? What's being performed? Who do you see?
Well, the shape of the town is we closed the high street. I mean, we didn't used to. When we first started, for the first 4 years, we were just inside the Civic. Now, we had far more control over it then because we painted our own picture. We hung all the wacky signs. And the signs are a crucial part of what Blackberry Fair's about. My concept is that if you put a smile on somebody's face, you're halfway through to a conversation. Halfway through to a conversation, you'll listen to each other. You're taking away any kind of threat because you're making each other laugh. So you're like, and it took the first 2 years to prove to people like the town council that we weren't. I thought, who are these bunch of hippie mavericks that doing this thing? And I've been told I'm not very much. My dad was very much a hippie, and it has got that sort of hippie ethos, love and peace attached to it.
Nothing wrong with the hippie ethos.
No, I love it.
I went out with someone for quite a long time, and she's now a very, very serious financier for a FTSE 100. But deep down, she was never happier than listening to a band drinking cider in a field. And she had that real hippie ethos, but that creativity came with a razor sharp mind. So I think it's a good thing.
Well, that's why that's why I came here tonight dressed with me pink, because this is how I'm happy.
Your little pink number.
Jane said you can't go dressed. Nice. I says I want to be as I am, as I'm most relaxed, and this is when I'm most relaxed. In fact, I sometimes go to bed like this and in the morning is besides the point.
There's something strikes me about that. Something about as I am.
Well,
I want to be as I am.
Yeah, and particularly as you get older, you realise that it's I know it's a cliche, but there's one crack at all of this. And if anything, because I have three children of my own who I love dearly, equally, and I look at all my friends and their kids and relatives and all that, is that it's their world now and it's their future, and I want to give them more than ever now. I want to give them some sense of hope, and I always say to younger people I work with, if you're feeling down about anything or fed up about something, I said, just roll up your sleeves and do something opposite. If you read something negative, go and do something positive. It's not about being a do-gooder, but you're redressing the balance. Because the thing about sustainability, there is this invisible set of scales. It's about balance. You look across the world at all the problems. It's when it all becomes imbalanced. And my goodness me, we're in an imbalanced world as we are.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's the paradox, isn't there? I think I'm pretty tolerant about most things, but I really struggle with being tolerant about intolerance and extremism. And everything seems so
tolerate it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the paradox. But it drives me nuts because there's no balance, and we seem to have lost the balance. We could go on and on for hours about that, but that's not. But I think, you talk about giving them hope. You talk about, it represents life, and, I think it really does. And I think you made a really good point, Dave. It's about being imperfect, because that's what we are as humans. And, it's authenticity is the word of the moment, but it is.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the word. That's the word I was actually struggling for. Yeah, authentic.
But we don't want it to become a cliche, because it really is very true, and you don't see many people around. Well, there is a front, so they tie together the front, the fear, authenticity, your audition, and Blackberry Fair is very authentic.
Well, I think also because if you look at social media these days, kids are sold this sense of perfection that you've got to achieve, ever more so than when we were young or when I was young. We didn't have that, and again, to me, it's unreal. And I just read something tonight about AI, what you can do to your photo. I thought,
Dave and I aren't here. Dave,
this is all generated.
I had my doubts about Dave. I thought his eyes aren't the same tonight.
They're not.
They're staring.
Yeah.
Well, we even mentioned this before about how they touch up. The photos are touched up.
Yeah.
You can say Snapchat. You can do a filter of yourself on it, and it automatically takes the way the bags from under my eyes.
Yeah.
It automatically smooths things out, and I look at it and I go, that's actually quite horrible.
Yeah.
And then I think about how I really did not want my daughter or my son to be looking at themselves in a way that they could like make it.
Oh, that's me. That really is me.
Yeah.
No.
It isn't you. You've kind of airbrushed yourself and you've made yourself look really weird. And like you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back. My daughter came up with an interesting point the other week. She said, I don't think maybe we're supposed to know what we look like. I said, what? She said, well, animals don't.
That's brilliant. And it would take away so much pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about, really insightful, simplistic, but so accurate.
Yeah. Really
it's like everything else. You look at a mirror and think, is that what people see when they look at me?
Yeah.
Is that what people hear when they hear? I'm profoundly deaf. I hear my kind of voice, and now I've turned my hearing aids up. I've got quite a crackly, metally voice, which I'm thinking, is that what they hear?
Sound like Metal Mickey from that kids' TV show years ago.
But that's what brings me back to the fair a bit. There's a deeper philosophy to it all. We've been offered stuff down the years. I think that just clashes. It's not just an event where you just fill the street with everything. Yes, you see, like we have Rimsky's Yard now. They come last year.
What's Rimsky's?
Rimsky's Yard's this couple. They have a whole village at Glastonbury, and a friend Sue, who she's joined forces with us in 2021. She moved to Whitchurch, and she runs some of the markets at Glastonbury. She came on board with us and she stayed with us, and she's now in charge of the markets. It's brilliant, but she's got some great ideas, and that's what I love, is embracing people's sense of adventure, that we've created this platform that enables you to say, as long as you're prepared to roll your sleeves up, get stuck in and help raise the money. Don't suggest something that we've then got to go away and find the money to pay. Because I said, if you're going to dive in and be part of this, then dive in and be part of it. You'll get so much more from it. And it is a celebration of each other. It's a balancing act. But goodness me, it's a balancing act. But the one proof of the pudding I say when people say things to me, I think, well, hang on. I said the why we do Blackberry Fair, as much as what goes on at it, is that it's got this inclusive spirit to it, and that it's trying to address in its own little way some of the things we've just talked about, that you were talking about, what your daughter thought about life and the way we visualise ourselves. All those things come into play, and it's heartening to me when we get artists or anyone who comes along to be part of the fair raises these things in conversation. I think so our message is getting across. I've had it was a few years ago, someone wanted to bring Minecraft, and I said to Claire, I personally don't think we should have it. I said, because in our little brochure that we print every year, it says switch your mobile phone off, come along and have a great time. It's not about taking pictures. People do, but we don't encourage it. It's about having a day off from all these things and saying, just come and have a great time and chill out.
You really have. You bought your childhood in Bethgeller with this, haven't you?
Yeah.
This is where it's all come from.
I was brought up on Rupert the Bear, because I knew Alfred Bestall, who was the illustrator of Rupert the Bear, and he lived in Bethgeller. And so I lived that magical existence, and I still do. I think I've grown up as Rupert the Bear.
It's a nostalgia for childhood, isn't it?
It is. It's escapism. It's pure escapism. The best part of Blackberry Fair for me, if you want to talk about the things that happen at Blackberry, all sorts of crazy stuff, and people say, can we have a programme with the times of everything? I says, there ain't no programme. You discover, and if you've missed it, you've missed it. But we try to put something at the top of town and then again at the bottom of the town, and discover it. It's the ambience, it's the day itself that you need to embrace. And when people say to me, is it going to be bigger and better this year, Steve? I says, it's never bigger and better. It's what you bring to it. I says, if you come to have a great time, you'll have a great time. And Dave, you and I talked about this sense of tradition and ritual, because one of the highlights of the day for me, or the highlight of the day for me, is our parade to the street at 4:30. It's the one chance that we get to take back the street. We don't have I'm probably get in trouble for this. We don't have high-vis jackets. We don't have clipboards. Yes, we've got a risk assessment, but it's nicely hidden under the table. It's there if we need it. We don't need to tell the world there's danger. We know it exists, but if we put things in place that quietly look after things, we can get on enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, the risks aren't ignored, but they're not broadcast either.
They're not broadcast, and we've tried to fight hard against that, and all the artists that participate. In fact, there's one guy, Russell Kirk, he does the big parades in Chester, and he comes every year. He's the crow man. He brings some wonderful puppets.
Oh, so this guy wasn't making it up.
No. I love crows. Do you know, there's something about crows that and the autumn and the season.
Just makes me think of Wurzel Gummidge.
Well, it makes me think of but also when you saw them on the hill above the trees, flying, there's something eerie about it, but something terribly seasonal. But he says, we call it the Carnival of Hope. He says, I love the Carnival of Hope. He says, because there's no clipboards, there's no officialdom associated, it's just chaos. And then people say to me, well, where do we meet and when do we participate? I says, either stand on the pavement playing your instrument or just join it halfway through. In fact, one year we set off and we hardly had anybody in it. I thought, well, it's going to be a bit of a damp squib this year. But as we went down the street, people just started feeding into it. By the time we got to the top of town, it was heaving. And I got this old brass bed out of my wife's Jane's uncle's garden one year. And that bed has now become almost iconic. And I hope one day it won't get put away in a glass case, but it's bought out every year. And they, because it's a celebration of autumn, they have an All Souls Day, don't they, where they make biscuits to celebrate the dead. I thought, well, maybe we can cheat a bit and bring it forward slightly. And as we go down the street, we'll hand out these biscuits to the kids. Well, anyway, one year, a local orchard gave us loads of apples. And about 20 minutes before the parade, my mate Chris, who was helping, said, Steve, what are we going to do with all these apples? I thought, oh, God, I forgot the apples. So shoved a bit of hessian on the bed. Says, pile all the apples on the bed. So we piled all the apples on the bed. Off we went down the street, all of us. And we're handing out now saying, Happy Blackberry Fair Day! And it takes me back to collecting for penny for the guy. We used to do a thing called Clennig on New Year's Day morning. We'd knock on the door and wish everyone Happy New Year. All these beautiful traditions we're in danger of losing. All we're trying to do is bring that culture forward and making it relevant to today's audience.
It's almost like a return to I don't know why I'm thinking this, but I am. It's almost like a return to innocence.
Yes.
Like
you're right, Dave. It is
more innocent times.
And I was listening to Enigma the other day, so that came to mind as well. but it is true, isn't it? And I think just doing something recently for someone else, I think we live in a very, very digitally connected world, and we keep coming back to this without meaning to sound like middle-aged curmudgeons, which I suppose we're in danger of becoming. But there is that return to innocence, and you return to that childhood. You read about people saying, actually, I've known people in their 20s, even teens now, who say, I wish I could have grown up like you did. And whilst we are incredibly connected if we want to be, I think we still crave, and we probably crave even more, that desire for real human connection, the desire for real human intimacy, for authenticity, the fact that we don't want a really polished presentation like the Cirque du Soleil at the Blackberry Fair. We want a really good creative interpretation, and you can see the flaws, but it's still brilliant because you haven't got the budget, but you've got the creativity and you've got the sense of it. Oh, this has gone slightly tits up, but actually that makes it even better. The British like having
the
serious
quirk.
about the fun, the quirkiness.
And the thing is, if you can all stand back together and laugh at it, that's the energy. You're giving off this energy. Again, if you're all sort of tight up and tight-lipped, everything's got to be bang on, it's got to be on this time. It doesn't happen.
You're on in
like
3, 2, 1, get on!
I mean, thing is, we do get artists come along. We book, I was incredibly proud. Was it 2 years ago when the Commonwealth Games were in Birmingham, and I applied to be a steward, didn't get it. I went along, and there was an introductory film about what Birmingham's got to offer. And there was so many of the artists that they had in parades and doing that. I thought, yes, Blackberry Fair, Blackberry Fair, Blackberry Fair. I thought, we've had them all in Whitchurch.
I couldn't believe that, because I saw at Blue Dot a few years ago, where it's a kind of a music and science festival at Jodrell Bank, which is incredible. And they, people like Groove Armada and Bjork were there. And they had this brilliant brass band dressed up in the kind of the 1960s, 1970s style, but they kind of played it. They had some deep techno playing in the background, or deep house. Mr. Wilson's
second liners,
and I've never heard a sound like it. This guy had a proper bass sax, looked like a bazooka, and I've never heard a sound like it, and it was incredible, especially with this overlay. And when I spoke to you about this a while ago, you went, "Oh yeah, Mr. Wilson two-piece. We had them at Blackberry Fair." I can believe it.
Yeah.
And that's see that again. It's just something else I feel, a sense of. It came from being brought up in Bethgelert. If you want something, you've got to go out there and get it.
Yeah.
I saw the photograph of Mr. Wilson's second liners. They'd been at Festival number 6 in Port Mary. I saw this wonderful photograph. I thought, who are they? So I start searching. And this is where technology does come in. Like you say, it's not about being a curmudgeon. It's finding its place.
Absolutely.
And being able to use it. And,
Using it, not being used by it.
Yeah, exactly. We found it, and we got Mr. Wilson's second liners in another 3 years ago at Dread Zone. And I do recall, we've met Craig Blacker, who's moved into town during COVID, put up this enormous stage in the Civic, and all the lads as I stand and say, I says, wow, this is far too big. It was incredible, and it absolutely transformed the Civic and shows you what you can do with space. And this is where I feel, the power of creativity comes into play of what we can achieve. If you've got, we've created a platform where we'll say to people, let's give it a go. As long as it doesn't land us in deep debt or it's going to harm somebody, and it's there for the greater good of people, let's just dive in and give it a go. We now have steampunks, we have pirates, we have fairies. It is pure escapism. But, more than anything for me is that atmosphere on the street that I feel, it was Pat. You've met Pat, haven't you? She's come to help us with the Action Easter now. She did the shop with us the other week. Well, I think she's a retired taxi driver or something, is Pat. Local lady. And she says...
Yes, I know what you mean, yeah.
She says it's great, it's the best thing for the community. Because it used to have a great street carnival. Like lots of these towns had wonderful carnivals. Sadly, that they've died a death. And that's why, for me, I really, really do hope that we can retain that sense of with Blackberry Fair, and even coming, jumping around the name. People get into sort of deep conversation. Oh, we can't call something that. It's got to be more literal than that. I said, why Blackberry Fair? I said, because we like blackberries. I said, they don't necessarily...
Well, you mentioned Blackberry people as well from your chat again. I remembered that from before. Because I wrote it down when you mentioned it, because I thought, hang on, there's a bit of a link there.
And you don't normally get blackberries in October anyway.
I love calling something just for the sheer hell of it, because you like it. So when we start... Dave came up with the idea for the lock-in, and I've always, if I ever had joined a band, which is never going to happen, but I always thought I really want to call it Canal Light Vessel Automatic, because I'm a huge shipping forecast fan, because I sail and I love it. I love the sea, and I thought, on a canal boat, I want to be in the band, but I'm never going to... Canal Light Vessel Automatic, which is where we're broadcasting from.
That's what we're locked in.
And it's just for the sheer hell of it. Why not?
Yeah, of course.
Where are the rules that say no?
Who's it going to offend? I've done a few things, as you're probably aware of, where I've landed myself in hot water. It happened back in Bethgelert in '87. We made the national dailies with the Wild West week we put on. But I look back now again. There was that innocence to it. It wasn't intended to offend anybody. There was no politics wrapped around it. It was just a bunch of people having a great time together and seeing what stuck. And I think if that sense is there, and that sense of sharing, it does genuinely feed out to people.
Do you think it does feed out? Are our lives too busy? And obviously we're all working. We worry about work, our children, our families, our health, our incomes, etc. Do you think does that spirit of Blackberry Fair, can that stay? Can that remain, or does it lie dormant for the year? Or do you see the benefits that spill out into the street, into Whitchurch? Do you think it's actually benefited?
I would like to see that. I would like to see more as it goes forward. I'd like to see that culture in a place like Whitchurch all year round, and that doesn't mean putting on a Blackberry Fair every month. You couldn't do it, because people often say, "Oh, can I have a Blackberry Fair every month?" And I said, "Yeah," and we just all die. No, it's the culture of what it stands for, the imagination invested in it, in things like we've talked about this, Dave, about the market. You just take the kitchen. You're investing in this cake idea. That in itself could be the whole catalyst for Action Easter. And there is it could all start from that plate of cakes.
And it's amazing, British, why do you think we got so good at cycling, sailing, etc.? They're quite British things, and rowing, but we invested in it, and it's small iterative changes If you can make something 1% better in this area, 2% better in that area, it seems nothing at the time, but those changes add up to massive, massive gains. And I think that works with mentality. And I think you reckon?
Oh yeah.
And I think your positivity, and I know we take the mick out of it, but it's done with deep.
Right,
but it's done with deep. It's done with deep affection, I think, and respect.
Absolutely.
And actually, I think this is part of what we're trying to do. It's you with what you've done and what you've brought to this place, from where you've been and your experiences, and actually just seeing, well, actually, there are some fantastic people that live around here, whether it's business or festival or whether it's working charity, civil service, and it's trying to kind of celebrate those people who've got off their arses, gone, actually, I can do something and make a bit of a positive change. If we get enough people doing that.
Well, the thing is,
join in a bit like it starts off small. There wasn't many people walking down the street, but then eventually more and more joined in.
Yeah.
Join the caravan. Be the caravan.
That's it. I mean, the third year in, we turned up. It was Sarah Vaughan who was my stalwart, and I still got massive respect for Sarah, because the two of us funded it ourselves the first year, and she stuck by me, and she, for her own reasons, she stepped aside now, but she always creeps back in, because I said to her, that's the one other thing for me, I said, the door is always open, Sarah, you were there at the beginning, and it's always here for anybody. It's not that I was not involved anymore, so it's not like that. It's trying to break down all those barriers between people that get in the way of us doing things together, and if you can create that environment for us to do this, why are we all sat here tonight doing this?
Because I wanted to be in a band called Canal Light Vessel Automatic. So this is the closest I can get.
But that platform's been.
But Dave likes lock-ins.
I like lock-ins. It sounded like a good idea at the time.
But would you?
What's wrong with it?
But would you agree that platform's sort of created to make that happen?
There's a bit of.
Because a lot of conversation.
There's a bit of stuff in that.
Producer interruption. You could be.
You
in
do
that
like
band.
your title, don't you?
You could be in that band.
Go on.
But it would be terrible.
Oh, cheers, love. Yeah, okay. So I actually might make the charts. Yeah. But there is something about it that, there is, coming back to that, there's been lots of retro engineering and advertising come up with a great idea and say, oh, what's the thinking behind it? I completely lost my train of thought. Thank you, producer.
He's too busy thinking,
blown him out.
I wonder if he'll have me in the band.
Completely forgot what I was going to say. Doesn't matter.
Triangle. Play the triangle.
It could be Bez.
Bez, what do you vibes?
I haven't got as much sense of rhythm.
Let me throw something back at you guys then.
Okay.
What do you get out of Blackberry Fair?
A disappointing amount of blackberries.
Yeah, an absolute paucity of blackberries. Just confusion.
Town Pirate Guy and I, we're going to make a video and have these two American holiday makers turn up for Blackberry Fair, and it ends with them walking down the car saying, well, I didn't see no blackberries, did you? Because we have people, the thing is, it's just another metaphor for craziness. Why not? Let's not call it the Whitchurch Autumn Fair. Anyone can do that. And if there's anything I hope, we've got this group going now, Action East to Whitchurch, the sort of group, and they talk about branding the town. I think, I just love it if the town had the courage to brand the craziness. We use the strapline Dare to be different, which I know it's been used a dozen times. In fact, a town not too far from here, it was the year we had this astronaut. I don't know if you were here then. We had this astronaut come down the high street. It was incredible, and he came from the future.
Was it not Elon Musk's Tesla's come out of orbit with David Bowie playing Spaceman? It's like, what the hell's he doing in Whitchurch? He said it's in Mars.
They created this sort of metal pyramid, and it was a whole beautiful piece of contemporary dance around it, beautifully done. And as it finished and he disappeared, people could see this mouse running around. It must have just got up there. And this is you're making me think about
Space Mouse. It was a clanger.
Very nice.
Oh, you're not that young then. No, what I was going to say was, and this is again, which gives me some sense of pride with the creative side of Blackberry Fair. Working in the theatre, the theatre, like lots of forms of art these days, are sort of becoming out of the reach of a lot of people because it's so expensive to go to. Well, one of the years, there's a wonderful organisation called Arts Alive who brings subsidised arts to the region. Lots of counties have them, but Arts Alive are based in Shropshire, and they're a wonderful gang. And they offered us a dance company, a contemporary dance company called Motion House. Now, it's contemporary dance, not everyone's cup of tea. It's called Escape, and we were offered them for £400, so we had them. they set up this scaff tower in the middle of the Civic, in the market hall where we perform now. And I ducked in there a couple of times during the day. The place was packed, all ages, all soaking up this show. And I thought, that's what this is about. You know, this is the power of theatre. I mean, you must sense that when you've played live music, when you've got the audience with you. And if we've created that world that enables people to come and don't know what they're going to get.
Well, it creates a kind of connection, I suppose.
And you talk to any theatre practitioner, that theatre is about connections, it's about engagement with people. And the difficulty is that the world we live in, because it's becoming so expensive, you go to the London shows, they're like, tickets are £200 or £300 now. You know, and I know the challenge we have with Blackberry Fair is that it's free at source. No, it costs nearly £40,000 to put together, and we have to beg, borrow, and steal that money to make it happen. But that's what makes it worth it to me, is that I feel as though, you know, this profession I've been in for 30 years, when I listen to, you know, head practitioners in some of these big theatres talk about what theatre's about, I thought, we're doing it. We're bringing it to the street. It's right there for the people to see, and they're right there in the thick of it. You know, they're celebrating your story, and you know, it's how that you don't know what the result from it is, because who knows what it might do for people.
I think if you have a drive and a common ethos, so through meeting people and through random conversations, you find out about each other, don't you? And you realise, actually, you know, look at this. Dave introduced me to you. There's always been a kind of a latent desire to get involved in the community with me. Dave, absolutely, with his, you know, background in psychology, hugely interested in knowledge about, you know, human interaction. Found out Laurie, IT, but also a sound engineer, lives on the boat. And then he, you know, just meeting and just connecting then brings ideas together. It's like a little furnace, isn't it? It's like a foundry. But there's not a huge amount of budget. I mean, I would imagine people are probably thinking there's thousands of pounds worth invested into this podcast, although there is probably in this map, not in the talent.
It's to come,
darling.
What do you mean there isn't?
Your kit, Laurie, is excellent.
That's it.
Open him another bottle, quick.
but what it does do, with some creativity, it is amazing what you can achieve. And I think sometimes if you have no money, as I've often found with clients, sometimes the less money, the more creative you are, and the more invention you have. Because ultimately, rather than spanking a load of money on media, which a lot of advertising is these days with no really good message, actually, we've got to be really, really smart about this and really kind of get into the heads of people. And I think you often end up with a much better solution.
Well, you can have all the gear and no idea.
Exactly.
I mean, if nothing else, I mean, that's where I mean about the sort of the leadership bit comes in, because you are, you know, you're juggling all these bits of string, and you know, no one comes to an event like Blackberry Fair to see the infrastructure, or, you know, an insurance policy.
The council probably do.
Possibly. Check out that you're doing all things right. But, you know, it's the content, it's what people have come to see. That, and so, you know, we try wherever we can to pare down the cost of the infrastructure. But, you know, there comes a point when you've got to be very realistic. And as I said, to hand this on, we have got to be able to say to someone, well, here's so much money to be able to organise, because it takes a lot of organising. But, you know, when I come back to this thing of delegating and the structure of the way Blackberry Fair works, you know, we have meetings with Sue to discuss the markets. I've got a meeting tomorrow night. I don't call them meetings, chat with Pete Ford. Pete Ford's retired NHS worker, but in a great band. Last year said, yeah, I'll take on the music, and he sorted the music programme, so he's doing that. We've got Vicky from BizEd, who last year came on, took charge of the volunteers. Now, we don't need to sit with all of them and talk about the whole of Blackberry Fair, because it's too big to bother talking about. You don't want to bore people. They've only got so much time to give it, but someone has to pull all those bits of string together, and that's where the curation comes into play. And you're filling in those little gaps and thinking, right, what will help that, you know? And I'm always trying to cross-pollinate ideas. That's what the joy of this was. Yeah. Is cross-pollinating, saying that person can meet that person, this might happen. And it's having a willingness, not, you know, when I say leadership, it's not about got to be involved with everything. It isn't. It's just saying, there's the stage, off we go. You
can trust the players.
Yeah, and in fact, you hear this said at when Emily Evers does Glastonbury, they get to a point, because it's such a, you know, it's a massive event. They hand it over and say, there, you know, and they trust the people they've been probably working with for so many years, know exactly what it's all about, and away they go.
The bus drives itself, really, at some point.
The only challenge that lands on your lap is that when we sign for a road closure, somebody has to sign it, and it's inevitable. It's my signature. So if the balloon goes up and the police arrive and say, right, who's in charge? It'll be me or Claire that they call for. And I was listening to a programme on the radio a couple of years ago. It was a horse trial somewhere in North Wales, and there was an accident. This horse ran hammer. It was the organiser of the event that was standing in the dock trying to explain it away, and that is a big responsibility.
It weighs heavily, but we do have a solution, because no one knows where Canal Light Vessel Automatic is. If pirate radio existed, this is
Sanctuary.
The high seas of the Shropshire and Union Canal. But I can imagine.
But that's what I mean. Somebody has to take that responsibility.
There's a sailing club up in which my brother and I have been part of for years, and it used to be 250 people for the last 100 years who got together and organised some races. Now it's grown. It's about 2,500, and the public liability. Professional rescue drives, professional good knows what, and you think, Christ Almighty, these people are doing this to go on holiday. It's probably about 10 weeks' work on its own. If you're a senior member running that club. So I can imagine it must weigh really heavily on your shoulders, Steve.
I read this last 2 weeks about Martin's Law, which I think I read up yesterday.
Security.
It's going to take 24 months to implement it, and they're trying to keep it as simple and accessible as possible. But it still states that if you're in a venue with 200 people or more, it's about training up your volunteers or your staff.
Are you classed as a venue though?
The evening gig will be.
Yeah, okay.
And then any outdoor event, I think it may be, don't quote me on these figures, but it may be 800 people or more. But the very fact that they're bringing in, when you read the small print, it says that your staff or your volunteers, whatever, need to know what to do in the event of a terrorist attack or whatever. Now, last year was the first year we've had a security on the door for the evening gig stipulated by the town council. But last year was the first time we'd had security on the street. Again, we don't make a big deal of it, but we can't expect any volunteer to deal with an issue on the street. And we've had one or two issues because, you've got lots of people coming to the event. So we can say to the this is where the professional side comes in. We can say to the security, we've got radios, right, and they'll sort it, because we can't expect that of our volunteers. And on a practical level, there are things that I would love to see implemented in the town.
This is on a wider picture.
Yeah,
so
from everyone's perspective.
It's this ethos, because I think we've spoke about it. Dave and you and myself. Is that in some ways it is a great little town, isn't it? It's got so much going for it in terms of where it sits in its physicality, equidistant between various larger towns, Crewe Station, my spiritual birthplace, maybe my conception point. I hope not.
On a train.
Well, platform 6 is notorious, and my father did work at Rolls-Royce and Bentley, so maybe anyway. But I think you've got these amazing. You've got a Michelin-starred restaurant. You've got some great pubs. You've got some fantastic businesses. You've got some amazing people, and it just sometimes, I don't know. That's that spirit. I think we're naturally British, and we can naturally be a little bit down on things, can't we? And I think sometimes we shouldn't be. We need to be more positive.
The number of meetings I've sat in going beautifully, and then someone says something negative, and you can see that everyone's like, "God, I think something negative to say."
It goes back to fear.
Yeah, it does. It ripples through, and it's been able to orchestrate and bring it back. And the thing is, we have loads of self-doubt ourselves. There's many a night when I've laying in bed thinking, "Oh my Lord, what's going on here?" and not sleeping, worrying about mainly money when it shouldn't. The funny thing is, the thing it shouldn't be about is the thing you end up worrying about. But it seems to happen. It falls into place, and it happens, and it happens the way it happens. We could be far, far more organised. There's an element to it where I think, no, we could make life a lot easier for ourselves. But it's keeping that balance right between the organisation, it being too organised, and maintaining that beautiful chaos.
Anarchic chaos.
Yeah, and which
is very British, and which is what we like.
Yeah, and that's got to remain part of it.
Why do you think Mrs. Brown's Boys is so popular?
It's got to keep Father Ted.
I totally agree with you, Laurie.
It's got to keep Father Ted involved.
Oh, Father Ted, yeah.
I mean, the great picture was last year when we were campaigning for the Civic Centre, and Helen Morgan MP came in. She's lovely as Helen, and we're all stood outside the Civic, and we've got our placards, and she doesn't realise what it is.
I think I might know where you're going with this.
Down with this sort of thing, and careful now. And she's smiling at the camera.
It's like when Father Ted and Dougal are tasked by Brennan to go and shut down the dirty film.
That's it. That's the one. That's the one.
Down with this sort of thing. I think we've even used that in work as well. I love it.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So
do you think? Do people kind of come up to you and go, "Do you know what, Steve? That's brilliant. We need to do more of it. Well, I love this."
Every year, they'll come and say, well, "It needs to be over 2 days." I said, "That's
Is it not?
It feels like
I
it."
thought it was over 2 days.
No, it's 1 day.
Oh, God.
It's not even a day. It's a few hours.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it starts at 10 and finishes at 6.
I clearly got.
But we're
issues
never
with
ready
time.
by 10. We're still putting things out at midday. But the thing is, it's the thrill, and the funny thing is, I come back to that parade at 4:30. It's so like the carnivals of old in Bethgallet. You know, I remember I worked at the outdoor centre, and this geography teacher, stuffy little guy, Rob with a little moustache, and he came to me.
They always have
terrible Midlands accent. Steve, I've got this bend. The beach may be brilliant for your carnival. Anyway, I booked them, not knowing anything about them. Just heard they were really good. I'd heard of American marching band, see. Anyway, we had the committee, and I thankfully had Alan at my side, and his sister sat on the committee, and they were, Anyway, we all met in the car park. 3 o'clock came. Where's your band then? There's a band not turned up. We've got to start the parade. Anyway, next thing, this coach pulls up. Lovely day. Door opens. Out get all these kids. Beautiful yellow 3/4 length tunics, and the drum major, black face, scarlet cravat, beautiful tunic. They all lined up across the street with these big drums. Everything was shoulder mounted. And I tell you what, they absolutely blew the village away. We did never see anything like it. And then again,
Not an accident with the butane.
This is chaos, right? Beautiful night. And in those days, everyone sits outside the pubs at night. And 10 o'clock, I'd said to Rob, I said, we let fireworks off the top of the pub. Suddenly, in the distance, all you can do is da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. And everyone stops and everyone's looking up the street like this. And there's this lady, she's long since died, she was Laura May, she always walked around in caftans. Chapman, she said, nothing has ever made me put my whiskey down than that sound. Anyway, everyone looks up and suddenly this line of yellow just came down the street, stopped on the top of the village bridge and did their whole show again. We didn't ask them to, but they knew what we were about. And it's that synergy. Is that the right word? That or serendipitous or whatever.
Serendipity, yeah.
They sensed what the value we laid on them, they gave back to us. And phase 1, the steel band we had for many years there, what was the guy's name? Who's to come? Well, we booked them for Blackberry Fair. They came 2 years on the trot, and the Stefan is the son of the guy that used to come, Victor Philippe, long since retired. And I said, Stefan, do you remember the Bethgallet Carnival? She says, Steve, we've never forgotten Bethgallet Carnival. She says, we loved it. The very fact that all the girls swooned over the lads and lads swooned over the local girls. But, you know, the sense that same spirit existed then there that exists now, and it's not any different. It's different people, but it just shows you that there's a commonality, there's a common spirit if you can tap into it.
And it needs, and I think this has been your gift, hasn't it? Or in the fact that you have the ability to bring this out of people. You know, it's taking that child and take that kind of slightly anarchic chaos and sense of fun and gone, actually, being your authentic self and going, I'm going to bring this here. And people will like it, which is believing in yourself, and people will have a good time. So it's coming back to your mountaineering course, etc. You have been a leader in this. You have been the catalyst and the conduit to it, and we all need that in our lives, I think.
But you know, it's not.
But it impacts elsewhere.
It's not just me. You know, it's the mentors and people I've worked with down through my life, and it's having a willingness to put something out there and see what happens, and share that willingness and that chaos. And you know, people either want it or they don't want it. I've got pals back in North Wales who I've done things with, and they've backed away saying, no, that's just too much for me, and I lost a lot of money. You know, but you learn by those mistakes in life.
That was exactly my ethos on Tinder years ago. Just put it out there and see what happens. Not a lot.
But you know, you've got to take risks.
Yeah.
You have to take risks in life. And you know, us sitting here now, to me, is proof of the pudding of what it's all about.
None of this has been recorded, you know. This has all been a disaster. We've got to do it all again. Producer! He's
So,
gone.
I know me now. I know.
The producer,
He's left
what
it.
producer? He's left
Right,
it.
let's unmoor the boat and let's go.
No, we're locked in.
So yeah, you know, it is what it is, and it's very hard to put your finger on exactly. You know, I wish I could bottle it and say that's what it's about. But
you're trying to, aren't you?
Try
You're trying
very
to,
hard.
and then you're trying to.
Well,
bottle
if you
it
think
and try
about
and
the
move
approach
things on.
we've taken with the Save the Civic, it's
Yeah.
exactly the same again. No committee,
exactly it.
just a group of people finding the right people to do the right jobs. I hope the same will happen with the Action Easter. It's just a group of people who, with a willingness to try something, not worried about what so and so thinks. It doesn't matter. You know, we're willing to do it. You know, in this day and age where people are unwilling, you know, there's always that thing about, you know, when young people want things, and then older people, because as you get older, you know life isn't forever, so you're just going for everything you can. There's that glitchy bit in the middle where people disappear, and it's trying to create a platform that all ages want to come on board. And nothing thrills me more than when we do the Carnival of Hope, and Claire, who I do the fair with, all her kids come back for it. My kids are there, and other people's kids are there, and we're all in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all pushing that bed down the street. I think, yes, this is what it's about. You know, that sense of community. It doesn't matter how old you are, you're coming back to your town. And if there's anything that gives me any sense of pride about it, it's when people come, because I'm not from Whitchurch, and I could be seen as a total outsider. But I just think we're just, you know, we're all human, just a citizen of the world.
It's quite a universal thing, and at ages 8 to 80, any number can play.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
ideally, many.
Yeah, I forgot what I put a saying last year on the bed. Something like 60 and still dancing, or something. It was something like similar to that. We always put daft sayings, but I think again, all those little messages are just about peeling away at the barriers that get in the way of us getting on together.
And that's what's, I think, you know, drawn.
And the very fact that we're still here.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it didn't happen over 2 years and then died. It's carried on.
But that spirit has kind of moved into Action Easter, which is basically about, it is the spirit and ethos of the Blackberry Fair, which is bringing people together.
It's it's a bridge, isn't it, between otherwise disparate people?
Well, it is, yeah. You know, we think we've got business, we've got residents, we've got visitors, etc. But ultimately, there is a circle that binds it all. We're all here, or we're all living here, or in and around Whitchurch, or visiting here. Therefore, we are responsible for curating the place. And if you want a place to be better, whether it's for community, whatever that might be, whether it's business, whether it's our mental health, whether it's commercially, whether it's feeling happier, whether it's doing better, whether it's being better off, I think it shows, you know, through what's been achieved with Blackberry Fair and the Civic, that actually with that creativity and those connections amongst people, we can do a huge amount to actually make things and make our environment better. But one thing it does make me think of is we are where we can be, and as much as we can be with what talents or abilities that we have, we are all to a point responsible for that. You know, whether that's smiling at someone, whether that's listening to someone, whether that's having a conversation and having some ideas. And it doesn't need to be perfect, but if you can bring some action from that, then that is hugely, in your words, Steve, powerfully positive.
Exactly. And it's, you know, things.
Perfectly put.
It's about people. it's about people. You know, we've far better chance of achieving the big goals in life, like, you know, we've got climate change and all that, if we all work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, I think we're done. Are we done?
That sounds fantastic. Actually, I was just about to say that's the perfect phrase for the end of that.
Fantastic.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Are we done?
The Lock-In is a conversation on a canal boat, often accompanied by beer. Every couple of weeks, we'll talk to someone from Whitchurch who's contributed to our community, who has a story, who makes the town special. They could come from any age, any background, any walk of life, but they embody the spirit of this fantastic, sometimes overly modest little market town. So, if you have a story, something to say, or know someone that does, we'd love you or them to get on board and tell us what floats your boat, gets your engine running, makes you tick. You get the picture.